Hello and welcome. And tonight is our live Q&A. It is rounding into the end of May as we head close to the Memorial Day weekend, and summer is right around the corner. Tonight's live Q&A is a pro line balls. I have spoken with so many college coaches over the course of this past spring, and all of them rave about the pro line balls, both the baseballs and the softballs, because of the versatility of the balls themselves. Mainly because they can get so many different uses out of the balls that allows them to not have to go through the expense of replacing baseballs that may have obtained tears in them or things of that nature, loose seams. When you're using training balls, you want two things. You want versatility and, most importantly, durability. ProLineBalls.com. Use the code Blue Book for your softballs and your baseballs, and find out why the college coaches, this is their ball of choice. You can do catching drills, infield drills. You can do fly ball drills, most of all hitting drills. You can train against velocity. So whether you're using jugs, a hack attack, the Pro Line ball, it gives true ball flight, and it gives really true instincts to hitters and fielders alike. Now, tonight, I'm going to kind of turn our attention to the age groups of 10 through 16. I get so many questions from families, parents, student athletes, particularly at the younger ages. And I thought tonight I would really take a few minutes and we would talk about a roadmap for the ages of 10 to 16. 10 through 16. A lot of parents feel overwhelmed because the sense of urgency that is in place in all facets of youth athletics, particularly youth baseball and softball. The urgency of lessons, the urgency of arm care and velocity training, the urgency of showcases in college camps, the urgency of college recruiting. And so many parents are frustrated. And so I thought what I would do is take the top 9 or 10 questions that I have received this week that are within this topic, and I would be able to provide feedback. And I think what's really important for us to understand as parents is 12-year-olds learn much differently than a 16-year-old. One of the most important, really, issues that there is a lot of agitation associated with it is when I start to talk to parents and when I start to put comments on social media about the need for athletes to play against older, athletes. Now, let's make one thing perfectly clear. Size discrepancy happens at all levels of youth sports. So I want to make sure that I'm really starting off with some students grow faster than others. That cannot be anything that we control. It's out of your control. It's out of everybody's control. And what I want to let parents understand is this is going to be a regular occurrence regardless of your sport, whether we're talking football, hockey, basketball, baseball, softball, lacrosse. Some 12-year-olds are really big and they are physical. They've hit a growth spurt much sooner than most. But at the end of the day, they all begin to level out. And where most parents are misled, and I've said this so many times, and I want to make sure that I clarify it first. For decades, Little League, all facets of youth athletics has had age designations. For instance, when I was a little boy, Little League was 10 through 12. In today's world, it's actually 9 through 12. And then you had Babe Ruth, you had American Legion, you had Senior Babe Ruth, you had Junior Little League. But, Little League, if we just look at Little League, you have 9 through 12, which is the major divisions of youth Little League baseball. If you look at, the next level, which is called Junior Little League, it's 13 through 15. Same with Babe Ruth. There's junior legion and senior legion. Junior legion is typically 13 through 15, and senior legion is typically 16 through 19. But we're going to focus today on 10 through 16. And I think where a lot of families are intimidated is they feel, okay, well, that big boy against my little guy or my younger daughter going to get hurt. Common sense would say that, especially with regard to pitching, you know, when you're a 10-year-old pitching to a 12-year-old, I get it. It's very intimidating. But I've lived this as a dad. And at some point, what really has to take place is an understanding that athletes learn by watching other athletes, older athletes, more experienced athletes, better athletes, faster, stronger, and they begin to figure out where they're deficient and where they need to grow and where they need to develop. Now, I am certainly not trying to advocate for a 10-year-old to be on a field with a 14 or 15-year-old. But I am saying that one of the most misunderstood, misinterpreted, and I feel offbeat comments, and when we have these parents that want to go on tirades on social media to scream and yell, and they're agitated and they're aggravated. How can you tell an 11-year-old to play against a 13-year-old? Well, here's a news flash. All of these parents that are being told by these instructors and gurus about college recruiting, at what point are we going to prepare our athletes for better levels of competition? You cannot control the competition. You can only control the readiness and preparedness of your student athlete, but you can't control the competition. You can't, there's no script in athletics. And so at some point, we as adults have to begin to look around and say, what has been good for upwards of 70 years is suddenly being told to us, whoa, you can't have any 10-year-old playing against an 11 or 12-year-old. It's 10U, and then it's 11U, and so forth and so on. Well, we're all striving, and we're all being this golden carrot that is getting put out in front of most athletes. College recruiting, high school varsity athletics, and we're going to prepare your student athletes for college recruiting when they're 10 through 16. That's not how it works. And what is upsetting to parents is, okay, you feel this sense of urgency. You feel like you're missing out on something, and you feel like you have to be one step ahead in order to not fall 10 steps behind. So we're going to clarify that tonight, and I'm going to take it one question at a time. And I've put together a few questions off to the side, but I see some people lining up here, and I'm going to get that started. And what I really want to let parents know is these are my opinions. Now, I've lived this as an athlete, albeit many decades ago, but I've lived it as a dad. I've lived it as a coach. And I live it to this day when I go to watch youth athletics. And really what I want parents to really come away from, particularly from tonight's discussion or today's discussion, and that is we have so many people that in most cases, not all, most cases are trying to sell you something. And so therefore, they're making a case, and then they're creating a call to action, whether it's a pitching lesson, an arm care, a hitting instruction, a fielding instruction, et cetera. We're going to go back to the foundational pieces of youth athletics. And that is, for one, we have to recognize that all youth athletics, we're teaching children how to develop skill sets from a mobility and agility perspective, from a foot speed and strength perspective, but more importantly, from a skill perspective. And skill, no matter how many different ways we want to say this, boils down to one common paragraph. And that is, in order for your athlete, regardless of the sport, to develop skill requires repetition, and repetition leads to retention. And repetition does not come solely in 30 to 60-minute increments, meaning lessons inside a cage or lessons within a structured practice of a travel or even a recreational team. It requires independent work from simple parents playing catch in the outside with their students, with their athletes, competitive catch play. I've talked about this on numerous occasions. Wiffle ball, hitting wiffle balls in the backyard. Wiffle balls don't travel all that far. They're easy to collect. They're lightweight. They travel relatively easy. But wiffle ball is going to teach eye-hand coordination. And I'm going to get into a lot of this. But remember, the foundation of tonight's discussion is that repetition will always lead to retention. And so that is the skill refinement. That is the dedication, the love, the passion, the grit for the sport, where your child has made a decision and expresses and conveys to you as a parent, I wish to get better. It's really important for me because I enjoy playing this sport with my peers, with my friends. I have fun playing this sport, and I would like to become better. So before there are lessons and before there are, all these instruction-based camps, and before you're seeking out these ultra competitive teams and programs that are going to require money and time, lots of both, lots of your time, and lots of your child's time, and obviously your money. Let's break this down into age groups: 10 to 12, 12 to 14, and 14 to 16. And on that, I'm going to basically take the help of, these questions and really begin to break them down. And so what I really want to get is, let's start with the age of 10 to 12. And this is where we want to build the athlete. We really want to build the athlete. And what does that mean? Between the ages of 10 through 12, does your student athlete, does your child, do they really love the sport that they are participating in? Now, everybody has a different level to that, but are they genuinely excited about putting a uniform on and then going into a game? Do they like to go to practice? Do they like being in that environment? And what you want to begin to understand is these are the foundational years: 10 to 12, 12 to 14. The vast majority of children are going to be participating in sports between the ages of 10 through 14. Yes, they start earlier, but when we start to get into that, what I call that fourth grade, that age of 10, maybe the third grade, and I'm talking about all sports, not specifics just to baseball. And are they really looking forward to that environment of the instruction and the repetition? And are they competing? Do they have a joy of competing? Do they fear competition? They don't want to put themselves in an environment where they're going to potentially fail, i.e. the batter's box or the pitcher's mound or the outfield where they have to catch a fly ball. We need to start really zeroing in at 10 to 12. It's about foundation of the fundamentals. So let's just start there, 10 to 12. And so however those can be obtained doesn't mean you should be paying for them. Doesn't mean you have to spend a ridiculous amount of time. You have to allow your child to play at their pace, at their desired level of intensity. Meaning, if you're putting your student athlete, your child, in an environment where loud screaming and yelling, okay, that may not excite them. It may not be something they look forward to doing. But if we're putting them in an environment that is not as structured and they are allowed to learn how to play proper competitive catch, if they are allowed to play like simple games of the old school pepper, where you're just tossing a ball to them and they're just finding the barrel of the bat and putting the ball back, towards the fielders. Things like catching a ball and placing a tag. If the baseball is above their belt and they're catching or above their chest and they're catching the ball with their thumbs in the up position, or if the ball is below their belt or their waist, are their hands or their thumbs turned down? Being able to grip a baseball properly and being able to throw it properly, being able to, bunt a baseball, swing and hit a baseball, being able to understand the simplistic fundamentals that are required, running bases, understanding the dynamics of the game between a force out, between a non-force out, being able to understand game situations, fundamentals. Because before we can have high levels of intensity where we're doing this ultra competitive, where everybody's screaming, have you ever been in an environment where you're playing in a travel environment, whether it's 8U through like 12U, and you have all these parents, some parents, throw the ball home, throw the ball in, hit the cutoff man. And you have all of these people yelling simultaneously. Not only is it confusing to you as an adult, but it's confusing to the kids that are playing, the student athletes that are playing. 10 through 12. Now, there's a fine line between, okay, should we be in this ultra competitive environment? Well, let me just discuss. The 10 through 12-year-olds belong on the same field together. Does that mean every 10-year-old is going to be as good as every 12-year-old? Does that mean every 10-year-old deserves to play at the same amount of time as every 12-year-old? The bottom line is this. As you get older, the competition becomes more intense. And what we have to begin to put back into the discussion of youth sports is playing time is earned by those that have demonstrated and have the capabilities to go between the lines and be competitive. But most importantly, it rewards those that are able to execute the basic fundamentals of the sport. So if you're a parent, you're finding your way to this, and we're talking about, well, my son is ultra competitive, and at 11 years old, they have really great skill sets. Well, guess what? That's great. And yes, I understand the desire to put your student athlete that has, let's say, a little bit more competitive mindset and maybe a little bit more polished with regard to skill sets. But you want to understand that child at 11 is going to have an empathetic kind of heart, and they're going to help the 10-year-olds. And they're going to help some of the other athletes that have lesser skill sets that are still navigating and finding their way. And so what I want to bring to your attention is the ages of 10 through 12. Everybody wants to be a winner. Everybody wants to get hits. But in today's world of game changer and statistics and metrics and on-base percentage, let's call a timeout and talk about that 10 through 12. We don't need to spend thousands of dollars on lessons. We don't need to spend thousands of dollars on travel athletics. I am not basically saying travel ball is not needed. Hear my point. I am saying to you, more is not necessarily better when it comes to structured, organized youth athletics. What is better is allowing children to play more, and not be under the watchful eye or the heavy hands of adults. Encourage your children to go in the backyard or play pickup games. Oh, we don't live in a neighborhood that has any kids. Okay, well, maybe in school you can invite a few kids over and maybe take a few kids to the ballpark and let them create games. Let them play wiffle ball. Let them play pickup games. And different sports will begin to take over. You might see them start with wiffle ball and it ends up as frisbee baseball, or it ends up as, dodgeball. But that's okay. The more they play, the more skill sets they're picking up, regardless of the sport. For instance, dodgeball. That teaches athletes to be more agile, more mobile, and to be able to maneuver their bodies in such a way where they're picking up things that you may not think about. Stop and go, being able to, that's what baseball is. A lot of start and stop, start and start, stop and start. Those types of things inherently are developing an athlete in a multifaceted capacity. Little League was never meant to dominate a family's summer or spring. In today's world, sometimes travel athletics, it has gotten to a point where we're playing 40 to 60 games. We're trying to squeeze Little League in because, of course, everybody wants to be a Little League all-star. That's a story for another day. And really what starts to happen is we lose track of what our priority really is. So if you live in a rural area and you don't have access to travel ball, it's okay. Try some of these things. First of all, you can play catch. You can play catch with your student athlete. Find people in the neighborhood, maybe it's older kids. Playing catch as often as you can is a tremendous, it sounds simple, but playing catch will teach young athletes how to move their feet, how to transfer the ball out of the glove and into their throwing hand, how to get the proper grip on a baseball, how to make sure they're transferring the ball out of their glove into their throwing hand, and then making an accurate throw. An accurate throw, competitive catch play. Very, very critical. Simple games. If your student athlete is younger and they're having trouble hitting a ball, here's a great way to fix that. Simple. Get a big barrel, the big wiffle ball bats. In my days, they were the big red barrel bats. But anything with a bigger barrel, get a lot of wiffle balls and just let your athlete swing a bigger barrel. We, as adults, want to make it harder. We want to put their regulation game bats in their hands. We want to get thinner bats. We want to instruct, and we want to use all these terminologies. That's not what we want to do. The more excited that you can get your student athlete to want to hit, the better that hitter will become. You start with the big barrel, and then you work your way down to the regulation barrels. And in some cases, the yellow, thinner wiffle ball bat, you can take a million swings with that wiffle ball bat. Your child is not going to fatigue. So keep it simple at 10 through 12. And understand that for many, there's anywhere between 2 and 3 million athletes, youth athletes, between the ages of 10 through 13, 10 through 12. And almost half move on and don't participate in athletics. It's just natural attrition that has been going on for decades. It's not anything new. It's not anything to be afraid of. It's not anything to worry about. Sometimes children just have other hobbies, other interests, other social activities. And sometimes athletics are just not a good fit for certain children. Their attention span, it doesn't fit for their attention span. It doesn't fit for the way their mind works with regard to speed. They need those sports like soccer or lacrosse, things like that. Exactly. Okay, so now I'm going to just kind of go through these, so bear with me. Now, travel ball. And I want parents to have a checklist when it comes to travel athletics. And what I want you to understand is, how do you pick the right travel environment? So let's start. We're going to stay with the, I think travel baseball really belongs in this 12 to 14 category. I'm just giving you my personal opinion on that. But you really want to find a more instruction-based. Again, let's repeat, more is not necessarily better. So by that, I mean playing more games and practicing less is not advisable for the 12 to 14-year-old. Remember now, we're dealing with really three big points of big time discussion points at 12 through 14. One, growth, physical and mental maturity, growth. Athletes are going through, those ages and stages. Some are starting to gain some height, some are starting to gain some size, some girth. And so all these athletes are beginning to change. They're beginning to evolve. And so travel really needs to fit you geographically. It really needs to fit your students with regard to how they learn. And you know your child better than anyone. Just because a travel organization has had tremendous success in the past does not mean it's with all other athletes. Doesn't mean they're the right fit for your student athlete. So travel athletics, regardless of the sport, require you as a family to understand is this a financial fit? Does this fit our budget? Am I going to get stressed over how much money I'm spending? What is included in the travel program? Meaning, are lessons a part of this, or is instruction included? Is there, coaching, actual coaching that's going on, or are we just preparing to play a whole bunch of games and tournaments? Because for the most part, most youth travel ball is game heavy, practice light, or repetition light. And if you keep understanding the foundational mindset for you as a parent to have between the ages of 10 through 16 is repetition leads to retention. The more reps that we take, the better that the reps are, the better that we'll become. And the more that we're getting that from whether it's individual or travel, the travel team, are they disseminating information clearly in such a way that your student athlete is understanding it and absorbing it? Because it's great to know all the 25-cent words and all these new slang terms and HLP and exit velocity and access and spin access and horizontal and vertical and all this stuff. But that doesn't matter at 12 through 14. So the travel ball world is really about, okay, what is this going to truly provide for my student athlete with regard to learning and skill set development? And what is my student athlete going to take away from this environment? Are they going to enhance their love, their passion for the sport? Are they going to learn the game at a higher level? Are they, being asked to execute against more talented, stronger players? Meaning at 12 to 14, and I'm really now starting to talk about getting into that middle school area of that, right on the cusp, that 14 to 15-year-old, let's say 6th through 8th grade. Let's say 5th through 8th grade. Okay, again, we want to reiterate. The business model of youth sports wants you as parents to think that everything happens in single-year increments, when in reality, you're now entering that middle school where 6th graders are competing with 8th graders. And okay, they look different physically, but sometimes from a skill set perspective, some 6th graders, but they're going to have to learn how to compete in that environment with the older, stronger, faster athletes. We as parents have to allow that to happen. But more importantly, we have to encourage that to happen. And will there be some fear, some trepidation? Absolutely. And we can't discount that. We can ask our athletes how they feel about that. But we have to encourage them to understand that falling or failing is part of growing, and understanding that that's going to help with regard to skill set development. It's not going to hurt it. Remember, success creates a false sense of security if it happens over and over and over and over, because what we're telling our students is, oh yeah, you're 11U, 12U, 13U. Okay, well, that's a ladder that could be giving your athletes a false sense of security because there's really no competition. But when they get into that middle school and obviously the high school ages, have we as parents done them an injustice by not allowing them to get a taste, to get a sense, to get a feel for what that looks like? It's really, really a critical part of development. Should my athlete begin to specialize or play multiple sports? Now, I'm going to start to go through these questions because I have a lot of them. Specialization in multiple sports. What I would like to say is, again, now I'm going to group them together, 10 through 12, 12 through 14. If your student athlete loves to play many sports or multiple sports, let them play them. There is no harm. But obviously, within reason, right? We don't want to be playing 2 games of baseball and then a soccer game and then a basketball game. Or conversely, a hockey game, a basketball game, and then baseball practice. In other words, these are children. They're growing. And what we lose sight of is that the sleep and the recovery that is associated with sleep and rest and hydration and so forth, there has to be a recovery period. So, obviously schedule wisely. As far as specialization, I'm just not a fan of it. Any adult that tells you as a parent that you should make your son a pitcher only, or you should make your son a shortstop only, or a catcher only, I have a tough time of that, because what we're telling a student is they're incapable of learning other positions. They're incapable physically or skill set wise of doing something different. When they're 10 through 14, you should allow them to see multiple positions within multiple sports that gives them a sense, an understanding of what all the other positions look like. So when they're a pitcher and a ground ball goes to second base, they've been out at second base. They know what that feels like. Or a deep fly ball over an outfielder's head in center field. They know what that feels like. Or to be a catcher and to get a foul ball off of a shoulder. It creates empathy, but it creates a sense of understanding and an awareness, game situational awareness. In multiple sports, allow your athlete to decompress physically from one sport, and maybe the next sport is more hyper mindset wise as far as mental discipline. Maybe it's not as physical, but it's more like a chess, allows them to think and become more cerebral. Others are more physical: football, basketball, hockey, lacrosse, soccer, where you have to take better angles. These things can only be done during the early years, 10 through 14. And so I am not a fan of specialization, and I'm certainly not a fan of trying to be a one-trick pony or a one-sport athlete. Don't fall for that line. Now, I get it. A lot of people have his opinions, and this is just mine. But think about it from this perspective. What if your athlete gets older, and let's just say they've been a shortstop because they've had the strongest arm and they have a really accurate arm. And let's just say they don't have the foot speed. As they get older, they're beginning to find out, okay, I don't have the foot speed to really play the infield like I did when I was a kid, because the field has gotten bigger. So that requires me to be really quick. So I can't play center field, but I'm not big enough to play the corners. Maybe I have to become a catcher. But they've never caught because you've been told your son is just a shortstop or just a pitcher. Those things are really, really dangerous because we don't know what your student athlete is truly capable of until they're put in a position to at least acknowledge what it looks like, what it feels like, and they try. You have to test and push younger athletes to their limits to see what they may be capable of and what they're absolutely incapable of. Okay, next question. And again, I apologize for putting my spectacles on. How many pitches should my son throw? Like, okay, this is another thing. And I'm going to tie this into 3 questions. How many pitches should my son be throwing? How do I protect my athlete's arm? And when should my athlete start worrying about weighted balls and velocity? Okay, I really want to, velocity, arm strength. It's not just for pitchers, but I want to let you know as parents. And this is something that's near and dear to my heart. And I want to let you know one incredibly important detail. Our children are learning to become athletes. And being an athlete requires a multifaceted approach. When we think about velocity or pitch limits, arm strength, immediately we start thinking about the arm. When in reality, it's the entire body that is making up the arm strength and the pitches. And so we need to start thinking about, is my child, are they gaining strength? How is their core? How is their foot speed? Meaning foot speed, sprinting, things of that nature. That all adds up into arm care and arm strength. What we no longer do is, and this goes back to the point about specialization. How many times are we playing catch with a tennis ball or a softball or a baseball or a football? Are we playing catch? Again, we don't talk enough about catch play because it's not sexy. There's no sizzle in saying play catch. When I start talking about pitching lessons and velocity and weighted balls, okay, sizzle. What I want you to understand is young athletes are growing. And while there are ways of physically, creating arm strength, is your student athlete, is your child ready for that? Is their elbow? Is their shoulder? Are they ready for that? There is no hard, firm number. And when you go back in time, and again, I'm older than dirt. I'm 63 years old, but we never had pitch counts. Nobody threw until their arms fell off. But what we did do was we played a lot of catch, and we played touch football, and we played with what we called a mush ball, which was like the size of a softball. Call it rag ball, or things of that nature. So we were throwing heavier objects, i.e. the softball and the football. We were throwing lighter objects, i.e. the tennis ball or the wiffle ball. And then we played catch with a baseball. There is no magic number. What is magic is about accuracy and proper grips on a baseball, meaning proper grips, making sure that your middle finger is over your thumb on the baseball, making sure that your wrist and your fingers play a part in learning how to throw a baseball, meaning this is not throwing, this is throwing, and finishing is throwing. And by doing that, you're going to increase the visual, which is the velocity, and the strength. Working on the processes of throwing, play more catch, throw more often, pitch less. Don't focus on the craft of throwing. In other words, I say this all the time, but parents, hear me out. If you, as parents and your student athlete, go for a walk, is any one of you worried about getting fatigued when you say we're going for a walk? I might walk for a half hour. I might walk for 60 minutes. We don't worry about how long we're walking. We're just going for a walk. If I say we're going for a run, okay, now that changes things. Well, we can't all run for 60 minutes. We might all be able to run for 30 minutes. But my point is, running is the stress of walking. Pitching is the stress of throwing. I can play catch and not have to worry about my arm getting overly sore or worn out. Whereas if I'm pitching, now I have to worry about, okay, what's too much? So what you want to do is you want to look for signs that the body is fatiguing. So to answer the question specifically, if your student athlete is a pitcher, if the ball starts to be consistently high, like above the umpire or above the catcher, and it's just continuously high, that is a sign that your student athlete's legs are fatigued. If your student athlete is constantly throwing balls in the dirt, that is a sign that your athlete is not striding long enough or out in front of them. So when a ball is consistently in the dirt, you just want to increase your stride length a little bit at a time. The rule of thumb is if they're pitching, you want to heel to toe from the pitcher's mound, 4 to 5 shoe lengths. So they put the heel up against the pitcher's mound and you count out heel to toe, 4 or 5, and then draw a line. And that's the line you want your athlete to kind of always land on. But just remember, the signs of fatigue are going to be when the ball is consistently high, their legs are getting tired. That's the time for them. That's it. You want to wrap that up. If the ball is always low, just lengthen their stride out a little bit. Also, if you notice that the ball is constantly going to the pull side, meaning if they're right-handed thrower and their balls are always going off to the left side of their body, that means that they're coming across their body and they're not getting out in front and finishing out in front. Always think about your throwing athlete in 3 areas. And I want you to visualize a light switch that just has that toggle button that goes up and down. And I want you to think about when your athlete is playing catch, they want their light switch to be out in front of their nose. And all they want to do is turn the light off. Just turn the light off. Now, if you're pitching and you want them to learn how to throw, to the plate, which is 17 inches, okay, over their right shoulder is a light switch. So I want one light switch over my right shoulder, one light switch over my nose, and one light switch over my left shoulder or my glove side. And they just have to learn how to turn off the lights over all 3 areas out in front of them. The important piece is getting your athlete to understand the wrist and then the fingers. The wrist and then the fingers. And if you get them to understand that, that will start to make their ball rotate. As far as velocity training, for the love of goodness, this is something you do not need. Hear me, please, loud and clear. We do not need to worry about velocity in any way, shape, or form. 10 to 16. I'm not going to touch it in this discussion tonight as far as 16 or older. That's a story for another day. As it pertains to velocity training, my goodness, parents, I'm seeing 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-olds. I see rankings. I see velocities. I see all of these things. In my opinion, it is a complete, total, fabricated, misunderstood topic. It is unnecessary. It should not be discussed. It should not be a part of your training program. Play catch with the football. Play catch with the softball. Make sure you're throwing a spiral with the football and make sure you're throwing accurately with the softball. Promise you, if you do those 2 things and you do them on a regular basis, arm health and arm strength are going to be just fine. Get your children to understand the lower half. Don't stand still when you're playing catch. Moving your feet to and through your throw. Moving your ball so your body, your nose and toes are going to the intended target. Every throw. Do not throw from a static position. Because I want you to think of something real quick. If you're throwing from a static position, meaning your feet are anchored on the ground, I want you to think about running as fast as you can and thinking about the old cartoons where you run face first into a telephone pole and all you see is the arms come out, the head's back here, and the feet and the hands are way out in front. That's what it's like when you're playing catch in a static position. So get your athletes to move their feet, nose and toes, moving to and through their intended target. That is key. Velocity. Don't get hung up on it between 10 and 16 or 10 and 14. It's not a part of the discussion in any way, shape, or form while your children are growing. Growth plates, ligaments, tendons. We're asking athletes to put Corvette engines into Prius bodies that have Prius braking systems. Hear me out. Throwing, your body will only allow you to throw something as hard as your body is capable of slowing or decelerating it so that it can be healthy and it can be done repeatedly. That's how your body works. Our bodies work in balance. Don't seek to stretch your velocity to the point where your body is physically incapable of doing it in a healthy capacity to slow it down and allow your body to recover. That is critical. All right. Here's the last few points. So I'm not going to get into curveballs or weighted balls. I will simply say curveballs and weighted balls are not through for any athletes between the ages of 10 and 16. Curveballs can be done properly. You must understand that a curveball is just a karate chop. Tom House teaches it correctly. There's no twisting of the wrist. We're not turning any doorknobs. All we're doing is a karate chop. All we're doing is a karate chop. If you want a great, simple drill, get a tennis ball can. For point of this discussion, I will use my water bottle. Hold the bottle just like this. This has approximately the same diameter as a baseball. And get your athletes to understand how to get the tennis ball can to go end over end. Notice my wrist. Here's my wrist. My middle finger is over my thumb, and all I want to do is go like that. Now, look, when I do this with a water bottle, I feel my water down here. And so when I begin to go out here, I feel the water rush to the end of this bottle. That is a great way to learn how to throw a curveball. If you start to see your athletes in the bottle spinning like this, they're not ready to throw a curveball. Take a tennis ball can, take a bottle of water, right? A 16-ounce bottle of water, and have them throw it end over end. I go here, 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 here. Great for curveball training. Velocity, no weighted balls. Do not put weighted balls into young children's hands. Do not do it. You're going to hurt more than you're going to help. I promise you. Next, and I'm going to rush through these if I can. Is my athlete behind? I really want to get to this point because I really want parents to understand that most parents are not failing their young athletes because they don't care. Most parents are struggling because youth athletics in general has made everything feel urgent. You're missing your travel ball feels urgent. Velocity feels urgent. Showcases urgent. Recruiting, I'm falling behind. It's urgent. But really, ages of 10 through 16, there's nothing urgent. There is a natural progression, and each step is integral. It's critical that we must have each step from a developmental perspective. And I want parents to really hear that message. Please don't feel like you're falling behind. Ages 14 through 16, this is when I really want you to start preparing. I want parents to start to prepare. Preparing. So 10 through 14, fun, foundation, fundamentals, learning all of the things that are critical to the success of athletics. And more importantly, specifically softball and baseball. But now we're preparing. Ages 14 through 16. And what do I mean by preparing? I mean making sure that your student athlete understand what truly lies ahead. Older, physical, stronger, faster, better athletes are ahead. There's competition. We don't talk enough about competition, and we certainly don't prepare enough for competition, but you need to begin to prepare your student athletes mentally and physically for disappointment, for that moment where they're going to have to compete for opportunity to get between the lines. Just because you've played travel ball for the super duper triple platinum elite travel ball team does not mean your high school coach is going to say, oh yeah, you played for that team. Yeah, you're going to start as a freshman. Understand there is a need to execute. There is a need to compete. And there is a blending of those two words in high school. And you need to be preparing your student athletes at 14 through 16, competing and executing. Also critical, what starts to come in at 14, if not earlier, is strength training. Strength training. You need to understand the sooner you get your athletes to get comfortable and learn how to properly move weight and begin to allow their bodies to gain strength, to gain size, to gain mass. That is going to be an integral part of 14 to 16. Trust me, parents, if you wait until after the age of 16 into that sophomore or junior year, you are in some cases going to be too late. And so what's critical is understanding, preparing 14 through 16, preparing your athletes for having the ability to execute in stressful situations, putting a ball in play when it's required, catching, applying a tag, making an accurate throw, understanding their internal clock of the game. The bigger diamond requires that internal clock to understand I'm at shortstop. A ground ball hit by a right-hander out of the right-hand batter's box I'm going to need to field that ball, make a strong, accurate throw to first base in under 4.3 seconds. Think about that. Ground ball, my shortstop picks it up, fields it, transfers into the throwing hand, and has to make a throw across the diamond in under 4.3 seconds. Internal clock. They have to learn. They have to prepare. They have to execute. Bases loaded. Nobody out. I'm a third baseman. I need to know, okay, nobody out. Ground ball to me. Am I stepping on third? Where's the base? I need to know. And if I do step on the base, it's a tag play at home. I have to yell tag. Baseball awareness, baseball IQ needs to be prepared between 14 and 16. We don't talk enough about baseball IQ. We don't talk enough about the strength in the recovery process at 14 to 16. What we do talk about is how many travel ball games, how many tournaments, where am I ranked? Where do I fit within the state, the region, the country? Nobody cares. Prepare your athlete for being able to compete. Prepare your athlete for being able to execute. And most of all, strength. It matters now, 14 through 16. Start yesterday. Start right away. Okay, wrapping up here. And I want to get to these. And here's what I want parents to understand. There is no time for panic. There is no time that you need to stress between the ages of 10 through 16 with regard to what you're missing, what you're not doing, what you need to do more of. 10 through 16, it's all about fundamentals, foundation, joy, love, passion for the sport. It's all about preparing your student athletes for the skill sets they're going to need. Repetition leads to retention. Most importantly, learning to prepare, to execute, to compete in strength and foot speed and all of those things that are required. That is what 10 through 16 is really all about. You need to introduce strength training into this process. I would say as early as 12 or 13, but that's strictly a family decision. The biggest mistake most parents are making is treating every year like it matters with regard to recruiting. All kinds of questions each and every week. And I am so blessed and I am so thankful and grateful that you send me these questions. And I have tried to take all of these questions and boil them down. And I know 60 minutes is a long time. And I'm just babbling on and on and on. But understand two things. One, I do this to try to speak to the masses. I'm not trying to be the voice, the resource. I'm not trying to tell you that my way is better than anybody else's. What I'm trying to give you as parents and as student athletes is consistent, a voice, a resource that you can use as a sounding board. Common sense. And that is college recruiting today, 2026 and beyond. The ages of 10 through 16, there's nothing going on with college recruiting. Let me say that again. There is nothing going on with college recruiting. Wherever your student is, with regard to whether they're starting JV, whether they're starting freshman, whether they're playing varsity, whatever their statistics are, there is not a college coach alive that is going to ask you as a parent or ask your student athlete what they hit as a 14-year-older or what they hit as a 16-year-older. They're going to ask questions like, what positions do they play? Where do they hit in the order? Those types of things, because all of that information gives them information. College recruiting now begins when your student athlete is physically capable of competing at the college level. There is no linear path from the age of 16 to 19 that says if you do this, this, and this, or if you play in these events, you're going to get to. No. College coaches want to know, can you compete? 2, can you execute? 3, Are you physically and mentally prepared to handle the workload at the college level? Can you compete? Can you execute? Can you manage a workload mentally and physically at the collegiate level? If those three topics are not definitively green check marks, there is no college recruiting. And so it is incumbent upon us as adults, and I will battle until my last breath and tell you the biggest disservice that we are doing to young athletes is trying to tell them that their world is 10U, 11U, 12U, 13U, 14U, 15U, 16U, 17U, and 18U. That is incorrect. And the sooner we as adults begin to discuss this and begin to create parallels to the high school and the college and the professional game, which is what everybody's striving to be a part of, that's the golden carrot that gets dangled. Until such time that we put athletes in the proper environment that allows them to feel a little butterfly and say, okay, I'm with some older boys, I'm with some stronger athletes, I'm with faster, more talented athletes. Until that happens, do we truly get the answer? Can they execute? Can they compete? And can they handle the workload? So I hope that this discussion has helped. I hope that this discussion has added some value. Now, these topics really hurt the algorithm with regard to people sticking around and watching. Not everyone makes it to the end of this video. If you have, I am blessed and I am humbled and I am grateful. I'm really asking you to engage with this video, share some comments, send some questions, but do so on the YouTube platform. Need to get people to engage with the YouTube, to share the video, the YouTube video out. And when the clips come out, share those clips. Ask questions. If you think I'm wrong, tell me here in the video. You know, a lot of people will say, Walt, you get really agitated when somebody doesn't agree. No, maybe because I'm writing a quick little snippet and I'm not allowed to verbalize it. You don't hear the voice inflection. I think disagreement or debate is healthy, and I encourage that because I think everybody learns through dialogue. But what I want parents to understand is there is a method to this process, and it is much deeper than how much money we can afford to throw at it. It is much deeper than how much time we're spending in a car going to and from tournaments and showcases. And why are we going to showcases at these young ages? And why are we going to college camps at these young ages? Take the time to take a step back. Take control of your athlete's childhood. For the love of goodness, childhood is so fleeting. Many athletes are graduating high school in 2026, and parents are looking back and going, wow, that went by so quick. And what you're going to miss is you're going to miss the car rides home. You're going to miss the discussions at the dinner table. You're going to miss the dialogues about practices and some of their peers and what the relationships are. You're going to miss seeing the kids hanging out in the backyard playing wiffle ball. I know I do. And I hope that this video really hits home for you. And so if you like it, please give us a thumbs up. Please encourage people within your circle to subscribe to Coach Beede, share, comment, engage. Until next week, have a great week in baseball. And I look forward to talking with everybody